Hi, this is Rhonda from I Will Walk With You podcast. It is my privilege and honor to introduce to you our first guest for our podcast, the lovely Ganel Lyn Condie. Ganel Lyn is a popular speaker, host, and author. She is a mental health advocate, social commentator, and faith warrior. Several years ago, my husband, Doug, and I wanted to find a podcast that followed along with our church's Come Follow Me program. There were and are many wonderful podcasts out there, but the one that spoke to our hearts was the Talk of Him podcast, which Ganel Lyn co-hosted. Her authenticity, vulnerability, and love for the Savior made it feel like I was listening to a dear friend. Doug, Dakota, and I had the privilege of meeting Ganel Lyn in September of 2025 at the Fortified in Christ conference, where she was presenting. She was and is everything I felt while watching her podcast. She truly is pure, beautiful light. She quickly said yes with a huge smile on her face when we asked her if she would be a guest on our podcast. It was such a joy talking with her, and we think that you will be lifted and inspired by the things that she shares. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I'll Walk With You, where we have conversations about how we can overall be more unified in our walk with others. My name is Dakota.
I'm Rhonda.
And I'm Ganel Lyn.
Ganel Lyn, we're so excited to have you. I just want to share that I started watching podcasts a little bit later. And the first podcast that really got me interested and where we'd watch every week was Talk of Him, which Ganel Lyn was a part of. And I loved your vulnerability. I loved your authenticity and how you would tie scripture into how we can apply it into our daily lives. But one of the reasons we really wanted you on this podcast was because of the vulnerability and the things that you shared that were so real. And I really appreciate what you've done. I follow you on Facebook. I love your post. I love how real you are. And just so excited to have you here as a guest with us as we, like Dakota was saying, just talk about walking with others. We feel like the world is so divisive right now, definitely politically, but even in religious walks, even in races and cultures and everything is just like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're evil is kind of what it feels like. And we find that tragic.
Yes.
And it weighs on my heart. And this is why we started this.
Well, I'm really excited, and I love meeting Real Talk of Him fans. If you're one of the OG fans, then you know it went through a name change. And I appreciate you valuing my authenticity because I'm back in therapy this last year, and I've taken the values quiz many times, and it can change what your top value. But right now, my two top values, which won't surprise you, Rhonda, are stewardship and authenticity. Those are my two top values. And as a speaker or author or podcast host or whatever I'm doing, if I make that my compass, then I'm okay looking a little foolish or awkward, or a lot foolish and a lot awkward. And I just feel really blessed that we got to meet a few months ago in person, and for what your goals are, because they're really in line with everything I do on social media or in writing or in speaking. That's really the same underlining goal. It's to try to create opportunities to have better conversations and real connection. And I would just say on the outset, I'm a mom of 2 adult kids, and I often get asked, it's painful, if you've read my stewardship book, to navigate sometimes the differences with people that we feel the closest to, that feel the most close to the extension of who we are.
Yes, absolutely.
It's much easier to stay in stewardship with my neighbor, my bishop, my cousin that lives 3 states over, that I only see their Facebook posts or their Instagram posts, and I can get judgy in my head of like, But when the proximity becomes my spouse and my children, it's much easier to go into ownership. And so I love that you're a mother and a son relationship having these conversations. And then the most important thing I would like to say is I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I am 54, so we used to be called Mormon. And I grew up in California. And when people ask me, like, even now, we've lived in Utah for 27 years, but people will still say, "You're not from here, are you?" I was, for a time, raised by a single mom who was divorced before Marie Osmond got divorced in the church. I used to go to primary on Thursdays. That's how old I am.
Me too.
Okay.
Me too. I'm 55.
Yes. And so, and also, if you don't know anything else about me, not how many books I've published or how long I've been married or my kids or my career or any of that, I was raised by a single mom in an all-Black neighborhood in Sacramento. The only other white family in the entire neighborhood besides this single mom and her 2 Mormon kids was the gay couple across the street.
Wow,
Oh, I
that's
love this.
amazing.
This is why you're so amazing.
Yes.
This
So
is
like,
why I already love you.
yes, if you know nothing else about me, that is core, like my identity, my socialization.
It explains so much about
Yes.
what you do and what you
Yes.
share and who you are.
Yes.
I
And
didn't
so
know that background.
before
That's
19
beautiful.
Yeah, before 1978 and the priesthood changed, all of my friends were Black.
Mhm.
And I lived in this neighborhood that just felt beautiful and normal for me, except I didn't like my hair compared to my friend's hair, right? Like, and so that was my core foundation. And then my mom remarried and we moved outside of Sacramento to where the Feather River Temple is now, which is the Marysville, Yuba City, Sutter area. And I was the token Mormon friend. So I had a Japanese boyfriend. I had 2 Mexican boyfriends from Mexico. My community was Buddhist and Catholic, and but I was the token Mormon. And to this day, all of my high school friends we're still connected. And they think I'm the prophet of the Mormon church. They think I'm like me and Mitt Romney. And maybe now with the Hulu show, they know some other Mormons. But if that explains to you that I really believe our divinity is found in our diversity.
I
100%.
love that.
Yeah,
Our divinity is found in our diversity.
Our divinity is found in our diversity, and we're not going to build Zion with all fill in the blank. The demographic is not going to be all this. We know that if you believe Zion is coming, we have a responsibility to create it now. And I feel like you two are doing that with this podcast. So any opposition you're having in launching this podcast, any anxiety,
no, there's none of that. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So
perfect.
that to me is because this is how we build Zion. We learn how to have conversations. And I think,
yes,
Rhonda is a therapist. I have a minor in psychology, so I don't have any licensing. But I would just say, as humans, tribally, we go to the people that we feel are similar to us to stay safe.
yes.
Absolutely.
And I feel like the work I've done the last probably 15 years full time is to flip that script and say the way you find God is you find people that are different than you and you grow in trust with them. That's it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely.
We're done.
And that's it. That's it. And like, I'm not saying that's not harder to do when it's your kids or your spouse at a Sunday dinner, but I believe that the Zion isn't going to come if you're a Christian and you believe Jesus is coming again, which I do. We have to create Zion for him to come back to, and Zion is going to be very diverse. It's not going to be one religion, one political party, one anything, one identifier. Yeah.
When we met you at the Fortified in Christ conference, and you spoke so beautifully, and I felt so connected to your message that you were sharing. But that was one of the things that actually stood out to me the most overall, the entire conference, not just your specific talk, was your kind of, I guess, reminder to everyone that, hey, everyone, we have to build Zion before Christ is going to come again. Like, it's not going to be the other way around. We can't just sit around like waiting ducks, to, I guess, kind of be rescued in that. We have to do a lot of the work.
Yeah. And I don't think as humans, if we don't have that modeled, and if you've taken away a lot of Sunday dinner conversations, like I was on the debate team in high school. So I was literally trained, and I think I mentioned it in my Fortified talk, that like I had to learn how to argue a point of view I didn't agree with.
Yeah.
And that was a skill that was developed with Sunday dinners and reading the newspaper, and now we scroll and we think we know how everyone believes. And we've eliminated any really face-to-face conversations.
Yes.
And I think that's the beauty of podcasting. And I think there's a way in which we're now trying to do it in podcasting form. But then once again, you start to only listen to the podcasts that you already have a bias towards. It's very rare. Like I constantly am trying to trick my algorithms. Somehow today I've tricked my algorithms to show only clips from Modern Family. And I love that. I may not try to trick it again because I'm like, I love that show and I'm crying because it's like the funniest, most diverse, and it was exactly what I needed today. And so it was like, there is such beauty and power in diversity, but I don't know if we're modeling that it takes practice, but it's actually safer, you know?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you have diversity in your life, when you can listen to somebody else, even when you don't agree with them, but you can actually really listen.
Yeah.
You're edified.
Yeah.
You become a better person.
Yeah. And the prophecy is very clear. I mean, if you believe as Latter-day Saints believe, there will be missionary work happening in the millennium. That tells you right now that we believe when Christ comes again, we're not all going to be in fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we're not practicing now to love our Lutheran friends, our gay friends, our Asian friends, our Democrat friends, our Republican friends, or whatever that is, we're not building that muscle. And honestly, my belief, like the podcast you referenced where we got to know each other over the air, started in COVID. It was being developed before COVID was full blown. I think we had 2 months in a studio before we were online. And I think COVID and a pandemic was to help us practice Zion, and we failed. So I always think, man, if we didn't learn it with that brick wall, what is God going to allow us to experience?
I would love for you to expand a bit upon that idea. What exactly do you mean?
Well, I remember thinking in COVID, well, I'm going to just take one example that's really controversial. So this may launch your podcast or like kill it. I don't even know.
We like controversy.
We'll take it.
Okay. I remember thinking for the first time that there was this group of people, I'm overgeneralizing, but there tended to be in our church 2 groups of people. The group of people that were always like, oh, that's the handbook, that's the policy, I'm obedient, I sustain. And then there was always this group, and I have some extended family members in this group, were always kind of pushing, questioning, and they were a little bit more, people would call them, maybe label them the doubters. Okay. So COVID hits, and what was interesting to me is for the first time, these 2 groups had something in common. This group, I'm overgeneralizing, but this group generally were like, the prophets asked us to get vaccinated, and some in this group that triggered them. And all of a sudden they had feelings of, I don't love this. I don't agree with this. And I'm wrestling with this policy suggestion or directive.
Right.
And all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh, what a beautiful moment. This group who maybe never understood this group could have empathy. They could turn to this group and go, oh, is this how you felt when this and this and this and this was said over the pulpit?
Yes.
And the letter went out about this, but instead it became still an us and them.
Yes.
I'm overgeneralizing, but this group were like, everyone should be wearing masks and sitting 3 rows apart at church. And this group was like, don't tell me to get vaccinated.
I'm going to wear my lace mask.
Yes, exactly. You're not really a prophet if you're suggesting that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And we see evidence of that now. I have family members and friends that are either not in the church or in the church because of how COVID played out. So Dakota, to answer your question, I thought this was a beautiful moment for earned empathy. For a group of people that had always felt really comfortable with culture and policy and commandments and all the things that come with being a member of the church. All of a sudden, some of them in this group were triggered because they were struggling with a directive. Well, we could have turned to these people that they always called the doubters and gone, oh, maybe that's how you've been feeling all
Yeah.
these years, where this policy directive was hard for you. I get that now. I
Yeah.
didn't see that
Beautiful.
happening. I didn't see that happening. I saw a lot of still division, even within our wards.
Of course. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So that's what I mean by I think we missed the boat on what that could have been
I agree.
for us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
I think that, and even outside of the church or outside of a religious lens at all, um,
Those divisions were.
I
yeah.
think that those divisions were ingrained and engraved deeper.
Yeah.
Um,
And still, I still see
unfortunately,
some people that have not come back from big lines in the sand.
Oh, yeah.
because of the
Absolutely.
idea that I'm right and you're wrong from both
Right.
sides,
Right.
instead of just a more collaborative conversation, I
What can we
suppose.
learn from each other?
Or what I would have loved, I mean, I still have some friends that have told themselves a whole story, and I can tell myself a story about when there's not communication, the story gets louder. I always tell my kids, my adult kids, I want to have healthy boundaries with you, but when I can't check the story gets bigger. And so what I think also happened during that time and is still playing out politically in our country is that we've told ourselves a lot of stories about, instead of saying, oh, can you help me understand why that letter from the first presidency was really triggering? Or can you help me understand why it's really triggering for you to see people just show up and not wear masks?
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me understand the fear behind that, the pain behind that, the experience you may have had, right? And we know from research, and I mean, I just told you, like, I'm seeing Modern Family. A couple of months ago, there was a lot of, right around Fortified, there was a lot of heavy stuff happening in the state of Utah that were in the headlines. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
And just because I would hover over one news article, then my feed would feed me more of that story.
Mm-hmm.
And I get my lashes done. I did years of chemotherapy and my lashes have never recovered. And I am not embarrassed that I pay someone every 2 weeks to put glue on some lashes. I love it for me. I'm a little low maintenance. I don't color my hair. But I love that my lashes didn't grow back and I can pay someone. And she's a new mom and she was struggling with this whole like learning to sleep train. And I didn't know that the new moms of today, because Ron and I had one book. We didn't have Instagram influencers telling us how to feed our kids and what plastic should be in their cups, or we didn't have that. We didn't have anyone telling us to lose this much weight and wear these jeans and da 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 da, right? We had one book and she knows exactly what the book is. And that was it. That was the only advice. And they hand you this human and you go home and you're like, what the what?
This is my first human.
Yes. I always tell my first human, I'm sorry, I'm the first human in my family. He's the first human in our family, and it's a pancake, and the first pancake is always a little,
Oh
So
my goodness,
I was
that's
telling my
hilarious.
cute little Ash girl, I watched her that first 9 months sleep deprived, and we would talk
Mhm.
about the baby and the sleep and and I could tell she was just like not having. Well, one day she's like, we're sleep training, and this has been 9 months, right? And I said, what did you learn? And she said, well, I was only being fed the horrible stories of only Western American families torture their children by sleep training, but now I'm tortured because I'm not sleeping and he's not growing and progressing and he needs sleep and I need sleep, and I found an expert. And we realized then that she had had constant reinforcement about what her bias and fear was as a new mom.
Yeah.
And then she found a source she trusted that had reasonable information for her to try sleep training, and she realized she wasn't damaging her child, and everybody was happy in about a week, right? Less than a week. So I use that as an example because that's the reality of what we're all kind of living within, is if we're getting information, unless you're purposefully going to consume content that is opposite than what you normally think about, you're not being exposed to it. And we're not sitting and doing this. We're not sitting and talking. And I run another account. I don't know if you both know this. I have an interfaith account called All Faith Keepers, and I'll sometimes cross promote. But when the show ended a couple years ago, the Lord's like, I really need you to and it's so tiny. It's on Facebook and Instagram. I did one season of a podcast and I interviewed people of different faiths.
I love
And I
it.
was trying to recreate the beauty of the educational lens that we can walk through the world.
Yes.
Like, it's not to proselyte, it's not convert. I'm very intentional about Muslim content, Jewish content, Hebrew words mean this, and LDS content, and my Catholic friends, and I try to rotate it all with the understanding of, as you understand, then you understand.
Yes,
Mhm.
listening
And
to understand
yes,
instead of respond or react.
Yeah.
I
or to
think that
convert, or to convert.
yes. Hmm.
You know, to convert. I have put it on everything with All Faith Keepers. This is educational based in interfaith community. And I
Yes.
just posted something this week about a religious group I had never heard of. And I have purposely studied world religions, and I attend other churches, and even in Utah you can find a different church to attend if you want to.
They exist.
They exist. And I posted, and my Catholic friend that's been my friend since junior high, we were the only two not going to the community church. So we were the outsiders, because I was Mormon and she was Catholic. And we
Mm.
would come home crying because people would say we're parts of cults, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I posted about it immediately. Shelly was like, wait, I've never heard of this group either. And I just thought, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? It's a group that's been around since the 60s. I had never heard of them, but they were proselyting in our neighborhood in Lehi, Utah on
Wow.
Saturday. And I was like, I thought they were the Jehovah's Witnesses. They weren't. And I just think, you know, can we approach our relationships more of from an educational standpoint and
Mm.
an earned empathy
Yes,
standpoint, and not a proselyting, convincing standpoint?
And
absolutely.
where we have something to learn from somebody else.
Yeah.
We have something to learn from people of another faith. We have something to learn from somebody of a different political view. We have something to learn from people who walk a different road.
Yes.
Like, there's so much to gain.
Well, I don't know if Dakota knows this. I think Rhonda, you might know this, but I've been an ally forever.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's why my name is what it is. All my gay friends say the reason your name is Ganel Lyn is God was making sure everyone knew you probably inside were always going to be a gay ally, always. And I wear that with pride, pun intended. And so and I've done a lot of work with North Star, and
Mhm.
there's always a little bit of a backlash at North Star, but I always say I want there to be room for all representation. And so
Yeah.
for me, the reason I've keynoted, I think I hold the record, 3 keynotes at their conference. And that's because it represents a small demographic. It represents a group of LGBTQ plus that want to stay in what we
absolutely.
call the covenant path.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of organizations saying you don't have to go to church and you don't have to stay. And I want that for my gay friends too, right? I want there to be a space for everyone to feel support if they need that and want that community. And
Absolutely.
so my gay friends that have walked away from the church or never were in the church, they've taught me more about Jesus than, you know, I always say to them, if you're lucky enough to have an openly gay person in your ward, please beg them to raise their hand in Sunday school, because they're going to give you a lens of God. Exactly. Right. And have we made strides to where it feels safer? And my friends that are in mixed orientation marriages sometimes feel like they're not gay enough because they're in a mixed orientation marriage. And I always fight for their right to walk their path their way. And so I love the name of your podcast for that reason. And so I'm passionate about the fact that I want it to feel safe for everybody, you know? And I want my gay friends that are trying to navigate this really paradoxical tension to have community as well.
Yeah.
And so I've said to some friends of other organizations that are a little bit more critical of the church, I'm like, just because I support this group does not mean I don't understand the pain here, right? I understand that. I just know that every time I go to North Star, I spoke in March again at their conference. There were first-time attenders in their 70s that had never come out. They've been active in the church their whole lives, and they're the age of grandparents. And yay, we need to have North Star for them, because before they die, I want them to walk into a room and be openly who they are.
Yep.
Right? Which for them also includes their membership in the church. and
Yeah.
they want both in their life. And so I just think we're better than we were in the 70s and 80s about having bigger conversations. You know, I got married in the early 90s. We were just starting to understand the internet, you know, and
Yeah.
because of that, we know more than 30 people in our town.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we're having more than 30 conversations. That's the problem. We know
Yes.
more.
Amen.
Yeah, we can Google Earth any picture of any town across
Yeah.
the ocean, but are we talking to someone that lives in that town across the ocean? We're not.
Or even talking to our own neighbors,
Totally.
or even talking to the people we go to church with, or
Totally.
even talking to the people at the grocery store.
Yeah.
We're not talking that
Yes.
much anymore. We're scrolling.
Yep.
We're liking, we're loving, we might comment on that, but we are not having conversations.
I
Yes.
think so much of it, and this is something that's been said by, everyone now. So it's not an original thought, but I think that just artificial conversations and artificial social, in quotes, media has really stripped away much of our ability and willingness to have conversations, to have confrontation, or to have just mutual and connected understanding. I was talking with my husband the other day
What's your
about
husband's name?
Hi.
Oh, cute.
Tyree.
That's a good name.
He's a cutie.
He's awesome.
He
No
is
one
awesome.
mispronounced that like they mispronounce mine. They say Ty perfectly fine.
I was talking with him the other day just about architecture, and we were talking about 70s homes.
Which is
And
my jam. Does that shock you? I want an original mid-century modern home.
I want a conversation pit. I really do.
Same.
Like those conversation
Step
pits.
downstairs.
Right, exactly. But it was built into the home, and it was usually, in a circular
Mhm.
um shape so that people could face one another. And
Yeah.
then over time, through um updated styles and consumerism and all those things, that's a separate conversation, but we've just kind of slowly opened that up so that we're not facing one another, we're facing a screen.
Yeah.
And I think I had a dream the other day, actually, where I was back in high school as a 30-year-old going back to high school. I have had several of those dreams, and so
You're
it's awkward.
reprocessing and healing some stuff.
Right? Something.
Yeah.
But I was walking around the common area at lunchtime in this dream. And instead of the bustle and, the chatting and the conversations and the laughter and, all of this hubbub, in the dream, it was just silent.
Yeah.
All I could hear is like click clacking of people on phones and, eating their lunches, but it sounded and felt like a library, and it just felt so cold.
Mhm.
And I woke up. It was one of those dreams where you wake up and just immediately feel kind of gloomy
Sad.
and depressed about the day.
Yeah, melancholy. I always tell my kids it's a melancholy day. Not
I
from
think that just opening up and at this point really breaking the mold that we've created for ourselves socially, and relearning how to converse and hold space for one another.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, listen to understand. Don't listen to respond. Don't listen with a knee-jerk reaction of oh, I'm right and you're wrong, or oh, well, you say this, but did you think about this? And it just turns into an argument, and no one wins.
no one wins.
No
No
one
one's
wins.
mind is changed.
No.
No.
One's mind is changed. And Dakota, there's a school in Payson, Utah that just banned cell phones. They have to check them in at the beginning of the day. And literally what you said was, it's so loud in the hallways now.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Which I love, because think about how many generations have now passed of kids that have not practiced talking in the hallway
Mm-hmm.
because they've just been on their phones. And so I do think it's a muscle that, and I do think like my kids in their 20s, that will be the generation. Like my son has an old camera and a record player, and he likes books with paper. I think this generation is kind of done in some ways. There's a saturation of like consuming media.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and yet, are we going to really bridge over to then, like, how are we going to help when we haven't built these muscles and they're kind of atrophied?
Yeah.
And we don't even know how it feels to be a little uncomfortable in a conversation where someone pushes you on something that you know is a trigger spot. And then the other thought I had is, I don't want anyone to ever feel like when they find me online or hear me speak or read one of my books, that I don't acknowledge there is real pain.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other societal issues that we have is we have compounding pain. We're not hiring a therapist to process our pain or doing EMDR to deal with our trauma. And so the headlines are compounding the pain of lived experiences as well. And we're not communicating that. You know, my daughter called me yesterday and she could hear it in my voice, and we were processing something, and it had nothing to do with her, but she could hear it. And we have a very trusting relationship. And afterwards, I was like, gosh, how many people are walking around today with pain that they don't have a therapist to talk to or a friend to talk to? And then the last thing that happens on the headlines pushes them over.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to make it seem like it's a simple thing to be gay in the church, or to be Black and live in a certain community, or to be Mormon. You know, it was not always easy to be the token Mormon girl, right? That had homemade shorts. Hello. Because we could, and that had a weird first name, and didn't play outside on Sundays, and couldn't date until she was 16. I mean, that was my world.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just think we also have a sacred responsibility to hold space for others' pain. And when we don't do that, then I think we hit these tipping points. And I'm watching that with some extended family online. They've made these big generalization posts, and I've been triggered by it. And I've been like, why is that triggering me? And I'm like, because they haven't come to a family reunion and had a conversation. They don't
Mhm.
know. We're not all thinking this, and they're making these generalized posts about all of us. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, that's some pain that's coming up for me, of like, I really do value having the conversation, but you don't even know how I voted. You don't even know how I think about that. You're assuming because
Yes.
I live in Lehi, Utah, I'm a
Yes.
da 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 da.
But I also
Yeah.
I think that it's so great when we as individuals are able to take a step back and take personal ownership, like what you just said, why am I being triggered by this?
Why?
And have that self-recognition of, oh, this is my perception of the situation. This isn't necessarily reality. It
To hold
is
up that mirror is
exactly.
really important when we feel triggered, to hold up the mirror and look at ourselves first before
Yes.
we are pointing the finger at so you triggered me. It's like, okay, what's going on for me?
Yeah.
Well, I would say triggers are teachers.
Oh yeah.
And I have an education degree, and I just really believe that when I get triggered, and really that example I share is a real life ongoing example right now, that I know that underneath that trigger is sadness. I'm sad that there's a lack of communication and connection with some of these individuals. I'm sad because I don't know how to bridge that, and
Yeah.
they're not making an effort, and the efforts I've made, and you know what I mean? And so I can feel walls being built, and I'm sad about that.
Yeah.
Well, when I label it that, then I'm not othering them.
Mhm.
Then I'm not like, oh my gosh, they're so in my head, right? But if I
Yeah.
don't name it as sadness, then I'm not really taking the trigger to heart, and I don't want to be othered, and I can feel they're doing that to me. They're blanket state meaning everyone that lives in this certain zip code, and I live on a very diverse street in Lehi, Utah, right? Based on just the political signs in the front yard. So
Mhm.
I just think that's the other thing, is that triggers are teachers. And so if you can get kind of underneath, why is that triggering me, and what is coming up for me, and what do I have control over?
Right.
You know?
I think it also it helps us prevent from putting labels on ourselves and on others. Like what you were saying earlier of, realizing, oh my goodness, what must it be like when somebody goes through these things and they don't have a confidant to work through this with, whether it be a therapist or a religious leader or a parent, a friend, whoever it is. I think that I think about this, and what I think happens, and I know that this has been true in my life, is that I begin identifying with those things. Instead
Mm.
of saying, oh, I am feeling depressed, I am
Yeah.
depressed.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then that's all I am, is I am depressed.
Yeah.
Well,
Or
Neil A. Maxwell talks about outside auditors, and I mean, I'm a super proponent of therapists and therapy, and I always say, like, that doesn't mean all therapists are cut from the same cloth, and there's
Not at all.
really bad hairdressers and really bad auto mechanics and
Right.
really bad therapists, and there's
Yes.
really
Yeah.
great ones, and then there's mediocre ones that are enough. But
And
there's
one might be great for one person and not
totally,
great for another person.
yeah. And so
I
when
do with my clients.
exactly. And so when I'm doing mental health education, so when people ask me, I have a minor in psychology, but I identify as a mental health educator, right? So I just got a really triggering email. My assistant screened it, and it's someone that found a YouTube video of mine, and it sounds like they didn't want to do any identifying factors, but they're talking about ending their life in December, and that they didn't have what my sister had. Well, my sister died by suicide, and she had a supportive family, and she had therapists. And so I think why I share that is I responded to this person, I gave suggestions, but I think there's such value in having outside auditors, because the stories in my head, I think when Dakota was just talking, it's not just that I start to identify with the depression, or I start to identify, it's that there's no one to check that. And it becomes skewed, and the isolation becomes the thing. So the woman with the issue of blood in the scriptures, I believe her 13 years was her isolation. That's what was painful.
Mhm.
Because in her culture, if she had a blood issue, she couldn't prepare food and she shouldn't be with people.
Right.
We all can identify with some issue of blood that in our minds makes us separate from our community.
yes.
All of us have a
Absolutely.
thing that we've gone to therapy about, prayed about, fasted about, had a priesthood blessing about, da 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 da, went to this CrossFit class, da 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 da, right? And it's still the thing.
Yeah.
Of course. I
And
think
so,
it's so easy to um again, to use the word identify. I think it's so easy to identify with our physical reality, you know.
yeah,
I think it's so which is just natural, you know, we all do it. This reality is real and tangible. However, it isn't our end all be all. I think what is most important for us to remember for ourselves and remind each other is who we are as children of God,
yeah,
as divine beings of light and love, and remember that, because it isn't something that we become, it is something that we already are.
are. And the one with the issue of blood, I guarantee you, like, I write about her in one of my books, that I want to have lunch with her and be like, what made you try one more thing that day? Which felt like the most vulnerable thing she could possibly do, which is to be out in a crowd.
Right.
Yeah.
And what did you do when the scriptures say everything she tried, she got worse? And I know her friends were posting on social media about that same thing and they got better, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
when we project that, like, well, God must love my neighbor better than me because their miracle came and their community came and their healing came and their blessings came, and what's wrong with me? And so, like Dakota just said, then we identify that there must be something super flawed about us.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, that's why I wrote the stewardship principle. That's the whole reason I wrote that book, is because I learned that principle a decade earlier, and it freed me from putting value on, well, God must love these kids because this is the stuff that they get to do on earth. And he doesn't love these kids because they had to be born during the Holocaust and they were Jewish,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they had to go to camps and be killed. He
Yeah.
must
Yeah.
not love them, right?
Right.
And it's not to say there aren't really difficult stewardships. It's to say God is trusting all of his kids
Mhm.
with a variety of things.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And when we isolate from people and only around people that are like us, we don't get to learn about their stewardships. We don't
Absolutely.
get to know how they built a muscle around mental health, eating disorder, learning disability, whatever it is, right? And so I just think, for me, in God's economy, I don't always understand why certain people have had 20 hard things and this person across the street goes to Hawaii all the time. I don't know why that's the plan, you know? But I do know, like Dakota said, I'm a child of God. And what do I know about the character of God? Ultimately, God wants to give me everything and he wants my happiness.
Right.
The steps between today and this mortal experience and that can be pretty windy
Yes.
For everyone.
for everyone.
And whatever that looks like, even the person who goes to Hawaii.
Yeah, I presented to an LGBTQ group, private group of parents. They had all read the stewardship principle. And I was super excited because sometimes I talk about that principle and no one knows what I'm talking about. And this was a group that had studied it for 6 weeks. And it was a very hyper-focused topic under stewardship, right? It was like, these are parents that love someone in their life. And so I was ready for this really vulnerable conversation that was like a faith lens around this topic that some groups, there might be 3 that can relate, but I knew going in, this whole group is going to get that I really believe it's a sacred stewardship to be in that community and to be trusted with that lens. And I had a lady in that group come at me at the end. And it was really jarring because Rhonda knows my show had just been canceled and I had shattered my wrist and my youngest had left home and it was a really hard time. And she's not on social media and she only knew peripheral of like some of my books and she thought that I wake up every day in faith. Like I'm just like some magic fairy faith girl that just believes God is in charge and trusts him about everything. And she just came at me and came at me and came at me. And finally, I didn't do great. I probably should have just paused, but I wasn't ready for that. I was thinking, I'm going to be around people that are really safe, that really have navigated some tricky stewardships and paradoxes, and it's going to be sacred space, I wasn't ready for, well, you're just the faith girl that never doubts and everything's charmed in your life. And I was like, and I didn't want to go into victim, but I kind of did. I was like, let me just be honest. And I started to cry and I just said, it's been a rough few months. I'm in a huge identity crisis right now. I don't know if anything I've done has made a difference in the world. And I'm really grappling with, I thought I heard God say, do this. And now everything feels like the rug got pulled,
Yeah.
And she got quiet and I don't think I ever really reached her, and later I heard from the host a little bit more, which I should have been a little more prepared for. But I share that because I think sometimes the public persona is I don't have an issue of blood. And if I do, I've written a book about it and I'm fine now. And that's
if only.
True. Yeah, if only. I do talk openly about certain miracles in my life where I can say, I can see God's hand in that. Absolutely. And it's been consecrated for my good.
Absolutely.
But I still am waiting on stuff.
People sometimes look at me and they're like, oh, you're a therapist. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yes, I have a master's degree and I have a learning disability. And it took years and years and years and years and years to get that master's degree. And I still struggle with reading comprehension and learning and all those fun things. I'm still so human. I still have my own like self-doubts and questions, even in my faith walk, but yet in my journey in getting my master's and in my career, what I have gained and what I have learned is to love more, to open that space more, to be with people who I normally wouldn't have the opportunity to be with.
Yeah. And how beautiful is that like, to me, true intimacy and connection only comes from that vulnerability. So sometimes I have to be careful because I don't get to just talk to the Dakotas and the Rhondas of the world that want to talk about all the vulnerable and authentic stuff. Like I'm walking around in a world where there's a lot of people that are like, why is she so like open about all this awkward stuff? And I have to remember, okay, not everyone is there yet. Not everyone is. And especially at church, I always give the example, like, especially with the LGBT example, I can use a lot of different stewardships, but that one specifically where parents will come and feel sad and hurt because comments that are made in church. That's a classic scenario, okay? Where someone says something that feels very insensitive. Or I have a friend that's Black and he's in a mixed race marriage and he's the head of the Genesis group here in Utah, right? And his wife's white. And so we just had an issue with something happening in Alpine, Utah that was very offensive, right? And so it could be a number of things where then you go to church and you're like, why at church are people saying hurtful things? And I always say, church is a one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah.
That means that 12th graders are in the same room as the kindergartners. And the kindergartners are going to say things that don't make sense in algebra because they're just learning numbers and letters. They don't even know what algebra symbols are. They don't even understand geometry, nothing. That doesn't mean they're dumb. It just means that where they're at in their life experience, they haven't taken the class of LGBTQ or race relations or unemployment or divorce or depression or anxiety or addiction. Okay. Yeah. So then when someone that raises their hand as a first grader says something and you're sitting right next to the 12th grader that has done all those classes and they say the awkward thing that we could write a million books about the awkward things we say at church that offend each other, right? Can we just,
that would be just a great book.
Wouldn't that be a great book? And I say the same thing about general conference. It's a general conference. It's a global church. And you have a huge one-room schoolhouse of different cultures and countries and customs. And then there's these messages that if you don't take them by the Spirit, of course we're going to get offended and hurt. I've been offended and hurt.
Yes.
You have to go back and go, well, they haven't ever had a sister die by suicide. They don't know why that was an insensitive thing to say. Or they don't have 3 best friends that are gay. Right. And so they don't know what they don't know. And
absolutely.
I just think it's the spaces where we get to practice that grace. And we also need to have outside auditors where we can go process the pain. Because sometimes it's like, I can't show up at church if I don't process some of this pain. It's not going to be effective for me to be there today, you know?
Yes.
And that's okay too. That's okay too. So I just want to throw that out there because I do think we have a lot of one-room schoolhouse stories. We're just like, why does Sister Smith always say the most homophobic things ever? And I'm like, because she's a first grader. And you've already taken Algebra 202. You just, it's not, she hasn't had that experience yet. She hasn't
or
had
is just a different major in college altogether.
Totally.
Like she's not even studying that.
No, she's like, I'm the go-to girl for quilting and canning. Great. I am not. I'm the go to Target and Amazon girl for that.
I love the scripture. And I'll equate it to the learning disability. I cannot quote scripture. I cannot tell you where it's
totally
at.
Fine.
But I love the scripture that talks about how the head is important. The foot is important.
Yes.
The hand is important. We need all of that. That is
all the body parts.
Another part of this podcast is we need all of that. We need each other. Yes. I need the person who hurts my feelings at times at church. You know, I do need that person because it gives me an opportunity to hold up the mirror. It gives me an opportunity to get down on my knees, to seek true answers, to seek true direction. I need them.
Which all lead to strengthening.
Yes, absolutely. Like Dakota and I just the other day had this conversation and I said, my poor sweet husband, who is just so solid and stalwart and like roots deep. He's just faithful, right? He's just solid, right? And I feel like he's married me and I'm like, whoa, I don't know.
It's so beautiful, right? I mean, that was Adam who was like, we're good in the garden. And Eve's like, don't you want to have babies? And he's like, well, yeah, but we're good in the garden. And she's like, yeah, but we got a whole bunch of life to learn, you know?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and you know what, too? I think, as you were talking, like, I need my family to explain rules for the games. Like, I can't read the rules of the game and understand it. I have to verbally.
I'm going to learn as we play. Please do not read the rules to me.
Yes,
and I need somebody right here looking at my cards, telling me what to do.
And I love that in so many of our opportunities to build Zion, God is not going to ask us all to traverse the same mountains. You know, He's going to have the neighbor that can fix a car and the one that can cut hair. And the one that can make cakes, and I'm really good at vacuuming, right? Like, I love So many times people are like, you're not nervous to speak. I'm like, no, but when they called me to be primary courser, I wanted to become a Methodist. I was like, my grandma was a Methodist, and they had donuts and chocolate, hot chocolate every Sunday, and they didn't covenant to everything of their lives to build Zion. And I was just rocked to my core because my husband could lead any choir. He's a Condie. They can do that. I can speak to 15,000 people in the Marriott Center, and that's sacred space for me.
Yeah.
But doing this and saying the right tone and words, and it scared me to death, and stretched me so much. And so I just think one of the beautiful things that I hope your podcast does is just start to normalize so that the listeners start to notice at the grocery store, at Thanksgiving dinner, or at church, who triggers them, who makes them kind of feel a little off. And instead of running from that, lean into that just a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to become your best friends, because I always have a test patient in my ward. I always have that one person that's a little prickly, that doesn't love, that I always lead out with vulnerability, and I always talk about the awkward thing, and I always raise my hand and say the thing. I do. I mean, the way I am, I love it when people meet me in real life and they're like, you're really who? And I'm like, yeah, this is how I am all the time. And there's always someone in my ward that's just like not having it. Like, why does she have to write a book and talk about it and explain her depression? And, and those are always the people I'm like, how can I love them just a little bit more? Right? How can I understand where is their pain coming from? Why do I trigger them so much? Why are they uncomfortable with, and then when you were talking, Rhonda, I have one particular person that I have offended, and I don't know why. And we were friends for a long time, and she just cut me off. And I've tried to broach this subject of, I've messaged, I've texted, and now I've stopped. And so I'm not saying that I'm everyone's cup of tea. I am cilantro. You either like me or you don't like me. Like, cilantro is not a neutral thing. People like it or they don't like it. Right. And I know I'm that person. My husband is chocolate. Everyone pretty much loves raw, And so I just know that, like, grace for people I've hurt, people that I've offended, that I've raised my hand and said the kindergarten thing, and that was your 12th grade class that I haven't even enrolled in yet. Mm-hmm. Or that I've hurt in some way, and you're not going to be ready to talk to me about it till the next life. I'm open and willing to apologize. But I just think that is just as much a part of this conversation of building Zion as it is, when was the last time you talked to someone that voted really differently than you, or dresses differently than you, or decorates differently than you, or whatever. I mean, obviously Dakota and I could build a whole mid-century modern compound and we would live forever happy.
Right? Absolutely. Never have to buy another couch again because it's just built in.
I know. And I can visualize all of the Instagram reels I send to my husband, because he never goes on Instagram, so it's my library, are all mid-century homes. They're just like carpet, windows, paneling, sunken living rooms. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I don't understand people that don't love it. I don't, but I get it. Like, isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful that it may get to the point where we have enough pain that we do have to talk to our neighbor and say, I need help. And I don't want to learn that way. I don't want to wait until it's so uncomfortable that I'm forced to have a conversation with a person I think I already know and I have nothing in common with,
Absolutely.
So, I mean, when you look at history, through the darkest times, I'm a huge World War II fan of, like, anything around that time, because it's, to me, the most fascinating study of what did a community do when they only had certain information being controlled, and then they were forced to other their neighbor, and there was a war happening, and then they were in dire need of helping each other. Where would I land? I would love to think I was going to be Anne Frank, right? And I'm going to, or Anne Frank's, the secretary of Anne Frank's dad that hid me. Right. I would love to cast myself that I would be that girl. I don't know. Based on how I think sometimes when I look at people's social media, maybe I won't. Maybe I wouldn't have been brave enough and strong enough, to know. And so I just want to share that, because I think that's what's coming. is that we can either practice it because we're at a ward chili cook-off and it's awkward. Tomorrow!
I'm the activity chair and he's on the activities committee.
We just had ours in October. We don't do a trunk or treat because our neighborhood turns into like Norman Rockwell Halloween, so we don't need a trunk or treat, but we do a chili cook-off. And there were some diverse ones this year. I was proud of our little Lehigh ward that we didn't just do the traditional chilies, but I just think that to me is the prayer for me. It's the prayer for my community. It's a prayer for why I post what I post and write my books the way I do. It's because I think I don't want it to be so hard that that's when we finally reach across the aisle literally and say, you know what, I need you. And I don't think we have a lot in common. And I'm kind of offended by something you said 15 years ago, but I still need you today.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ganel Lyn. I would love to know, just to kind of summarize and wrap up, what would you like others to gain from hearing about your personal experiences?
I think some of my most trusted people, my go-to in the closet crying people, on paper, our bios don't match at all. And so, and I could give you very specific examples of how very different on paper we look. And I hope that gives one person courage to lean into a relationship with someone that is very different than themselves. Because I promise you, you will be pleasantly surprised what comes into your life. These are the people that know my soul and understand my heart and know what I value and believe. And it's different than what they value and believe. But they are my safe space to say all the things. And if I was to walk away from those relationships because we don't check the same boxes, man, I would be so much less. My life would be so much less. And so I would just say in closing, that's my invitation, is like lean into that person that triggers you a little. They may not become your best friend, but hold those people close to you that are safe. They do their own work and they're really different than you. Those are the people in my life that make me feel rich. It's not how many likes on a post or how many followers or how many books I sell. It's those handful of people that I know I can say the dark parts of my thoughts and my flaws, and they're the biggest cheerleaders for me, and we're different.
Yes.
Yeah. In a practical sense, and in your words, how do you think that we can overall be more unified in our walk with others?
I think it's being willing to say, well, this is what I started. A couple months ago, I started getting triggered by some cliques in my neighborhood. And I'm 54 and I have my friends and I don't go to church for my besties. That's not why I go to church, right? But it was, but especially when you live in Utah and everyone goes to church and lives by each other, it's very, I grew up in California where you were so happy to be at church because you'd see someone else that was like you and you didn't have horns in your head, which is what everyone thought we were as Mormons. And so it was like a family reunion. It was like your cousins and they weren't your best friends, but you were so happy to be with people that you could feel community with that understood you. And I was feeling some heaviness in my heart. And I was like, what's that a pain about? Because they're kind people, they're good people. And God was like, I told you in January what to do about this. And I thought he was telling me to do something professionally. And so I started 3 months ago, basement gatherings. And I have just I thought I was just going to invite different people every month, but now the people that have come once want to keep coming. And so now it's getting a little big. We'll see how it goes in November. In a very practical way, Dakota, I am purposefully inviting people that I don't know their story, or I know they're feeling left out. And the first time I did it, you'll never see who comes to the party because I don't want FOMO for anybody, but you'll see my basement gathering posts. And I've had people, because I shared at Fortified that I was going to do it. And I had multiple people say they had been having the same prompting. And every month that I've posted, people have DM'd me saying, I've been prompted too, and I'm afraid.
Mm.
And I think that tells us more than anything. We're all afraid of feeling awkward. We're all a little junior high. We're all a
Yes.
little sure that everyone's judging what our outfit is
Mhm.
looking like. And no one is, because they're worried about their outfit. Let's just be
Right.
honest about it. And we're all feeling a little bit like we just want to be seen. And so
Yes.
I realized I'm not saying those cliques shouldn't have each other and love each other and want to go on trips together and post about it. I'm saying that if you're starting to feel outside and left out and that you don't have community, you can solve that.
Mm.
You can do something about it. I make sourdough. I have a book coming out in February called Sourdough and the Savior. And I said I would never write a book about sourdough, but I did. And it's about my journey of like sharing, making sourdough, praying, and taking it to people. And sometimes God's told me to take it to people that I know don't like me.
Mm.
So maybe it's sourdough, maybe you're not a hoster and you don't want everyone to come to your like little conversation pit that Dakota and I are going to build one day in our houses. But there's always something that we can do to solve that problem. That problem of us separating ourselves from everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, those seem like really simple things. Like after the first gathering, and it went pretty well, and I did it a second time, and I was wanting more feedback, I realized, no, that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because we don't have coffee time at Mormon churches on Sunday, and we're running around doing our callings, and we all go home. And so do something. Maybe it's a prompting to do lunch with someone that you've wanted to get to know,
Yeah.
or you text someone that you just are thinking about them. I think it's those small little efforts that are really what God says make the biggest changes, right? By small and simple means, great things.
Yeah.
Yes. And the things that are led by the Spirit.
Totally.
Yes.
And that's the only reason I'm doing the basement gatherings. I don't think everyone's going to be best friends after that, or that they're not going to feel left out sometimes. But can I do something to help foster connection in my community?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, we all can do something. My next door neighbor, Sam, isn't a member of our faith and is pretty quiet. He roots for the other football team than our family does. Okay. The red side and the blue side. Okay. And he is the first neighbor to shovel my driveway of my snow. And I've
Yeah.
talked about Sam on probably more podcasts than he wants because he's very private and shy. But I just think that's his sourdough. That's his basement gathering. It's his way. If we go out of town, we don't even ask him anymore. He'll pull in our garbage can so the HOA doesn't get mad. I don't even have to ask him, right? And so we all have something. Sam is not going to start a monthly gathering or, but in my mind, Sam has created community because of what he offers, and we all can do that. So Dakota, I love that question. I just think if we're feeling hurt, instead of blaming and victimizing, get a good therapist and then do something about it. Do something to
Absolutely.
foster community that's not online. Do something that creates a conversation. It's a lunch date or it's dropping sourdough off. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think we all have our little thing that we all have something that Zion needs.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's gonna be really boring if it's all the same wreath.
Wouldn't that be terrible?
Horrible.
Terrible.
Horrible.
I don't even want everybody to be like me. Like
I
that
don't
would be
want anyone
scary and
else like
loud and
me.
obnoxious.
I know.
I need
DMs
quiet, calm people.
I know. I get
need
DMs all the time
balance.
of people saying, "Oh, I want to be you," and I'm like, "No, you don't. You don't. You want to be what version God is calling you to be? If I can mentor,
Absolutely.
great. But so I hope that answers your question, Dakota, because I do
Yes.
think the listener that's feeling the nudge, it took from January to September for me to really feel sad in the summer and hear the gathering over the fence again, and feeling, even though I feel there's some connection, some left out feelings bubbled up. And I literally heard God right before Fortified, like whack me upside the head and say, "I told you in January what to do about this." And so I didn't overthink it. I didn't over plan it like sometimes LDS women can do. I didn't make it bigger than it needs to be. And that's the season of life I'm in. I'm not running around kids to soccer games. And so that's the other thing I would just say is like, do what you can do in this season of your life to
Yes.
create community
Yes.
in your community.
Yes.
And that,
Absolutely.
you guys are doing it with this podcast. You've done it in your home. You've done it. I see Dakota's posts. I feel like he does it with that. I think there's so many beautiful ways in which we can uniquely and individually in our own diversity build Zion.
Absolutely. Well,
Yes.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I want to share one last thing before wrapping up. There is a lyric in a beautiful song. It's called Crack the Case by Dawes. It's a song that I am actually going to be performing a cover of in a concert soon. But there is a line that says, I want to call off the cavalry, declare no winners or losers. And and admit our shared mistakes. Maybe that would crack the case.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to throw out one of my two favorite shows that I binge watch over and over again on repeat. So probably 30 times is Gilmore Girls and West Wing. And I feel like there's a solution in both of those shows for any problem I have going on. But I was just watching a West Wing episode and realized it's 20 years old. And what I love about that show is it shows this bipartisan Democrats and Republicans. One of my favorite episodes is an episode of Glenn Close, and they have an opening on the Supreme Court. And, the Democrats want to put their person on, and the Republicans are ready to fight. And then there's one Supreme Court justice that's ready to retire, and they put on a very extreme conservative and a very extreme liberal because they have this beautiful friendship where they love to debate and they respect each other and they love each other. And I just thought, I don't even know if a show like that could be written and produced anymore.
I don't know.
Because there's so many of those episodes where you can see the beauty of that, of like what Dakota just shared in that lyric of, we've come a long way in 20 years, and in other ways we're so far behind now.
Yes.
Where we don't even have examples in media or in relationships where there's actual strength in that diversity and those opposing opinions.
Yes.
And how beautiful it is. I know it's just a TV show, but it always shows me like how beautiful it is when two people in respect think very differently and what comes out of that. It's possible. I think that's what heaven's gonna feel like.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be shocked. We're gonna be like, what? I just saw a friend post today. Remember, Jesus didn't come and change the politics. That's what the Romans were doing.
Right.
Jesus came and boldly loved.
Yes. Yes. Amen. I thank you so much. Like, we are so excited, honored to have you with us. This is right. It just is so right. And thank you for being
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me, and lots of prayers that this trickles out and little Zion communities start percolating.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having a conversation with us, Ganel Lyn.
You're welcome. Love you both.
All right. Love you.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of I'll Walk With You. We hope that it inspired you as much as it did us. Until next time, remember that we love you, and our invitation to you is to choose love over division. Make it a great day.